one question that I have for you is, from your perspective, what do you see as driving the demand for faster data life cycles? Going from, data ingestion and curation all the way to producing a model and then putting that into production. What's making that such a high pressure, high stakes situation right now in enterprises?
I think the key to success is consistently making good decisions. And the key to good decisions is good data, good information. And so all things being equal, the better information you have, the better decisions you will make. An analogy I sometimes use for this is, let's say that we had a choice of flying on one of two of the latest and greatest Boeing 787s. They've been maintained identically. The crews have been trained identically. Both planes are flying through the Himalayas at night, and the only difference is one has an altimeter that works and the other one doesn't. Of course, we all want to be on the plane with the altimeter that works. And the point being that given the same decision-making capabilities, an organization can be much more effective if it has the right data at the right time. And we're recognizing more and more that we can process these huge volumes of data and essentially make the entire data set available to decision makers. And I think they recognize with that, that's going to be a significant competitive differentiator for them.
Excellent. Sanjeev, you had a comment as well. What was your perspective on that?
I agree with everything Don says. What businesses really want is they want access to all data, like he said, and they want it when they are making decisions, not 24 hours later after the campaign's already over. Now you come back and tell me that these are the parameters, so it's too late. So the reason why businesses sometimes are unhappy with their data ecosystem or their data layout is because the time to decision is too long for them to stay competitive.
So I was going to say the same point. In fact, over the 7-8 years I've been in the industry in Spark, we've seen this big shift, right? It's gone from, oh, let's do end of day batch, and now it's becoming like, there's a shift towards real time or near real time, and the time to insight has been steadily going down. It used to be end of day, then it became like every hour. Now they want it every 15 minutes. Combine that with models, and now you want execs asking real time, like a natural language question, and getting an answer that is up to date, like 5 minutes ago, what's happening, right? So that's that, and the companies who get it right will survive, will thrive, and the ones that don't get it right will fall by the wayside. So that's the pressure that you talked about, Clinton.
Yeah, right? And if we translate this even into the cost, see, this is how things are so different now. I'll give you a funny example. Many of my colleagues, myself included, we've been guilty of running a Cartesian join in Oracle database in the past, where you have a 1,000,000-row table, 1,000,000 row, and you just join every column, so it just, in the past, what would that do to your database? It would bring it down to a crawl. The DBA would go find the errant SQL and kill it. And then we'll be back to normal. What will happen today if you ran it? We just get a $40,000 bill. So we have to be more real time. We have to know exactly what's happening at the time. And if something is an anomaly, then we want to act on it instantly and shut it down before the CFO gets a bill and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, efficiency really is the new SLA. Go ahead, Don.
I was going to say
I cannot emphasize on that enough, because once upon, like in the old system, right, when it's on-prem, there is a natural constraint that you can't run up a bill bigger than your system is.
Right.
In the cloud, unfortunately, that constraint is not there, right? So you got to be extra vigilant in the cloud. Don, over to you.
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the biggest things that has changed is, and I think this was touched on by both Subbu and Sanjeev, is the amount of data. A lot of these models that we're using have been around since the 50s. And in fact, LLMs were first proposed in the 60s. What's changed is our ability to process these huge volumes of data. One of the things Google proved to the world was that if you could process all of the data, in their case, the internet, you could be the best search engine, period. And so Google actually maintains multiple copies of the internet. And one of the things it's been able to do from the onset is to go through and index that data using machine learning. And therefore, when you do a search, it comes back with a document or something that meets that search. What we're seeing with LLMs and generative AI is now even better than that. You can go ask it a question and it can come back to you with an answer, a human, what appears to be a human-like answer. And I think a lot of that's driven, and Subbu touched on this a little bit, is when we had data centers, we were kind of confined with whatever was in that data center. In fact, one of the ways I got into the big data space was I was faced with a problem where we had to index 6.5 petabytes of data and search it. And I went to my data team and I said, hey, how long will it take you to get this available to me? And they laughed me out of the data center, right? It wasn't something that they could make available, even if they had the room. But in the cloud, of course, in a matter of minutes, I could stand up a super environment that was capable of processing all of that data. And that was kind of the eye opener for me, that data centers were going to fall by the wayside. The economics are driving it, but also this ability to stand up a supercomputer that you never would have had in your data center and process these tremendous amounts of data is a big differentiator that companies are seeing they're able to do today, and it results in better decisions for them. So I think that's another thing driving the growing need of data and more data.
Excellent.
Every
Go ahead, Sanjeev.
small, medium-sized company today, on an average, according to many studies, have over 100 SaaS products. On an average, every company. If you're talking about a large company, you're talking about, on an average, 450 SaaS products. Imagine the amount of data that is being generated from these SaaS products. And the funny thing is, a lot of these SaaS, so I'm talking about SaaS products like, Marketo for marketing, or HubSpot, or Salesforce, obviously, all kinds of products have now come up. And the problem is that each one of them has its own data model, and that can change. When the new release comes, they can change it, because they're all experimenting. So many of these are new companies. So this is the explosion of data that we are ingesting. Now we have to analyze all of this data and find some nuggets of, like, what are the correlations between these different elements. And by the way, the schemas are all different. The semantic meanings are all different. And this is the reason why it is so expensive to build these so-called modern data stack. And hence cost is really high. I see this all the time. The CFO goes to the CDO and says, you invested $20 million. What did I get? A few reports and dashboards? It's very hard to determine because there's so much overhead trying to integrate all these data assets.
I think you touched on some really good points. This is what we see out there, right? People are drowning in data, starving for insights. I'm sure you've heard that before, right? And the fundamental reason why this is happening is because, like you said, there's so many versions of the same data. Yeah. Processing it, accounting for versions, massaging them into one canonical form, and then doing insights on it. That's the heavy lift.
Yeah.
That's where the bulk of the compute and the bulk of the developer effort goes in, right? Yeah. And that's just in batch. And now compound that with streaming for real time, and you get a sense of how hairy the whole thing gets, essentially.
Yeah. Now, Don, to your point, you talked a little bit earlier about everyone wanting the very latest and greatest product. So earlier this year, McKinsey published results from a survey that said 75% of respondents expect Gen AI to cause significant or disruptive change in the nature of their industry's competition in the next 3 years.